Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby! Yes!
Welcome to the Scott and Holm Podcast. We are back with what will be, by a pretty wide margin, our meatiest episode of Season 11, leading obviously with our busiest week of regular season men's basketball. 5 games to both recap and preview, including a top 25 road win and a top 5 road Big Monday showdown to come. We also have multiple spring sports kicking off that we're going to preview tonight, baseball, men's golf specifically, checking back in with a couple spring sports that had wins last weekend, and what I believe will be our most track and field talk of the current season. There were actually multiple Cougar sports that we simply didn't have the time to include this week, which I think just tells you what a buffet of stuff we'll have to talk about tonight. Wouldn't have it any other way here, Bobby. Always good to see you and talk to you. How are we doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Work got a little crazy, but today is normally my Friday. I'll have a little bit of work to do tomorrow, but yeah, it'll be I'm looking forward to just peel back the curtain a little bit. We are recording this before the Utah game, and we are going to come back with our Utah thoughts after.
Time travel.
But definitely looking forward to how quickly we can go through this meaty episode, considering the game tips off in an hour and a half. So
yeah, nothing like being under the gun time-wise. So I'll be quick and mention, if you don't do so already, if you want to support that we do here on a weekly basis, talking about the Houston Cougars now in our 11th season as an independent Houston Cougar podcast, please go to patreon.com/SHpodcast. So we're going to do our usual thing, go back in chronological order to kick off the Cougar men's basketball talk, which will be last Wednesday's 79-55 win over the Central Florida Golden Knights. Bobby, sorry to break the seal on saying that before you in this episode, but dismantling, I think, would be an appropriate description of this game. Would love to crow about how I had a slightly better read on this one than the two of us, but if I'm being completely honest, I would not have predicted a 24-point margin win, where frankly that wide margin actually at the very end kind of flattered the visitors for how uncompetitive the latter stages of this basketball game was. I mean, in the broadest strokes, it was a dominant offensive effort against an opponent you probably should have expected such a dominant offensive effort against, but also one of the very best defensive efforts we've seen from this group all season. Bobby, other than making 3-pointers, you can hardly point to anything the Cougars didn't do very well against UCF, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts from this one?
Yeah, just an absolute dominant performance, like you said. Kind of had to go back and rewatch, you know how they'll sometimes do like the extended highlights. That's kind of what I watched to just remind myself, especially coming off the BYU game. It's hard not to have that kind of go to the forefront of your brain. So I kind of went back and kind of rewatched it. I mention this almost every week, how much I like going to the game flow and the win probability and that kind of stuff, and enjoy looking at that, because I feel like your eyes see one thing, but there's a lot to be gained by looking at the game flow and what it kind of looked like. And Sam, this game, Central Florida was down 15-13 with about 8 minutes left to go in the first half. So over the next 28 minutes, the game never got closer than those 2 points. And really, it didn't even get much closer than 5 or 6 from there on. The Cougs outscored the Golden Knights 64-42. Of course, Central Florida followed this up by losing by 20 at Cincy to make our win look slightly less good. But
we talked about those home road splits, then, man. Very good team at home. It's maybe not capable of beating anyone other than Utah away from home.
Yeah, it's amazing how bad they are on the road. On the individual performance side, 14-10 from Sinak is incredible. And if you're getting that from Chris Sinak going forward, which we'll talk about later, this team becomes really dangerous in March. I didn't think Kingston had his best game. Then you look at the box score, and he had a game high 18, 6 assists, 1 turnover. A real ho-hum kind of game there, Sam. Craziest stat to me, though, was clearly the points in the paint. Sam, do you have any idea what points in the paint were in this game?
The Cougs were at least above
note of
50. I did not make it note of it specifically. Hit me with it.
Cougs had 42. UCF had 28. Or I'm sorry, 42-14. The margin was 28. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. Yeah, the Cougs outscored the Central Florida Golden Knights by 28 in the paint. That'll work. That'll do, Pig. That'll do. So those were kind of my thoughts going back, watching this game, rewatching some of the highlights and looking at the box scores and what I remembered from the game. Sam, what'd you think, bud?
Wasn't able to watch this one live, watched in full the day after, and was really only kind of vaguely aware of what was happening in the game until right at about halftime. And by that point, U of H had a double-digit margin lead. So like you, was kind of surprised when I went back and watched it that at least in the earliest stages, this was a pretty close, low-scoring kind of game, really up until that period right after the under 8 media timeout. And at that point, you saw the Cougs stretch the lead out to double digits, really take the game by the scruff of the neck. Great offensive effort. Great offensive effort. Despite going 0 for 10 on 3-pointers in the first half and only making 3 from deep the entirety of this contest. And one of the things we knew about UCF coming in when we previewed them, that despite starting a 7'2 guy in John Bull, a 6'9 guy in Jordan Burks, and the long list of defensive challenges the Golden Knights had, probably near the top of that list was defending inside the arc. And man, the Cougs just punished them for it. You mentioned the points in the paint margin. 32 of 45 on 2-pointers. That is U of H's highest percentage in the current season against any opponent. And against a Big 12 opponent, this isn't just U of H taking advantage of something that they probably scouted UCF as being particularly poor at. For a team, this U of H team that certainly started the year not shooting the best percentages, you're really starting to see scoring inside the arc becoming a strength for this team. Both of these big stats that we highlight, I think kind of paint a clear picture on that one. And Kingston Flemings, I think did a lot, but that just tells you the insane standard we have for him. That was just, oh yeah, it was a fine Kingston Flemings game. Well, he's routinely putting up the best numbers we've ever seen from a freshman guard, like in this program. That's just how incredible the kid is. But this was so great because it was a team offensive effort that so many different guys contributed. Chris Sinak contributed to this dominant Cougar win. But really the most impressive thing, I think, just because of where this opponent is good and not good, is that defensive performance. You held UCF to a current season low 32% on 2-pointers. That's an absurd percentage to hold an opponent to, especially a Big 12 one that will likely be in the NCAA tournament. I mean, and Themis Folks and Riley Kugel came into this game really as one of the more prolific scoring duos in the Big 12 in the country and made a combined 4 shots. And other than Kugel going to the line a decent amount, can't really point to any kind of consistent impact either of those two guys had last Wednesday against the Cougs. And this was a UCF team that came off 3 straight performances scoring 79 or more, including that win the previous Saturday at home against Tech. You held them to a season low 55 points on Wednesday. And again, this was a final margin where U of H rightfully called off the Dogs after the last media timeout. It could have been much, much worse if U of H had their starters out there for the full 40. I'm confident UCF wouldn't have broke 50 if you left like starters in this one. And that's how well you were playing defensively. And we've acknowledged on here, in some ways, U of H with so many more minutes than really ever under Kelvin Sampson going to freshman, you've seen growing pains defensively. You've seen maybe relative struggles to the insane expectations we have for Cougar men's basketball defensively. But I think this game was a reminder, Cincy too before, but kind of harder to tell against a bad offensive opponent, that the defensive ceiling with this current Cougar team is still very high. Like, I don't want to get overhyped from this game because we went out and saw this team on Super Bowl Sunday lose by 20 at Cincy. Again, giving up 92 to a Cincy team that has been nothing if not offensively challenged. So clearly a UCF team that's dramatically worse away from home, but also a great defensive performance that I think foreshadowed another good one that we're about to talk about on Saturday. And one that was exactly as not ever in doubt as you would have hoped coming into the matchup.
Yeah, it was, this was certainly a game where you wanted a little bit more than that 1-point win, especially with it being at home. You know how we talk about that. I did not see 24 coming, though. This really felt like heading into the game that this was going to be one of those kind of 7, 10, 11-point games, and 24 will, that'll work, Sam. That'll work, buddy.
It'll work. I didn't even think about this until just now. Do we want to at least talk like Kelvin's post-game comments?
Yeah, let's talk it.
Since I don't have the verbatim quote in front of me, I will just splice it in here from the numerous people who were at U of H media availability after the game, and you can just hear his thoughts in full now.
Outside the program, you can think what you want. You don't know unless you're inside the program. But I never thought Mercy would leave. But I'm around him every day, though, so I have an advantage. And I recruit him and I coach him. But it was a big deal that he came back. It was a big deal for Chase, that Chase came back. Ramon came back. Sid came back. Jacob came back. All our guys come back. And so that helps us. Now, we participate in the NIL just like everybody else. We know what our kids' market value is. I mean, trust me, they're not starving here. They're getting exactly what the market is for them. But, we have a very poor athletic department. We're poor. We're poor when I got here, and we're still poor. We probably have the lowest budget of anybody in Power 4, and the way our recruiting is going, we have to stop at some point because we don't have enough money to keep bringing in really good players. And that's not easy for us to do. People ask about recruiting. Teams that have the best recruiting classes usually have the most money. That's the way it is today. Like we know, we signed Akena and Arafan early. A lot of these kids we have will come back, but who knows what else we'll sign? Because how much money we have. It's not about who do we want to sign, it's who can we afford to sign. And even though we've been doing this NIL thing, that it still feels funny for me to even say that. It's like a culture shock that's coming out of my mouth. Because for so many years it's illegal to do that. But it's legal now. That's why they call it NIL. Now it's legal.
Not the headline I expected out of this one. That was, and again, as I alluded to, I was not in. I was driving back from Southern California on Wednesday evening, so I didn't have. I got more post-game headline stuff out of Kelvin's post-game comments than I did, the dominant whenever UCF, which I understand. Like UH beating UCF, even if it is impressive, isn't going to move the needle nationally as much as a coach calling his program poor. And that's not Kelvin. Like that would be, I think if any coach of a top 25 team that's been consistently good did that now, it would be drawing similar headlines. So we'll limit ourselves on time here because we have so much to talk about that we'd rather talk about more than this topic, honestly. But also we can't do a Houston Cougar podcast and not address it. Bobby, what are your general thoughts? What Sampson's saying and anything you want to add related to the topic?
I think when we talk about him saying it or anything like that, like that's kind of been our thing. Is there isn't a program, and I'll be honest, there isn't an athletic department. There's very few that have done more with less than the University of Houston. It's kind of always been our thing, is we don't have a lot of money. You are way behind on the getting Big 12 money. You look at everyone else outside of Cincy and UCF. Guess what? That you don't have the money that they have. You're closer to TCU, right? Because they were left in the wilderness too. They figured their stuff out together. You have, I've said this before, a generation of Cougars who don't have any attachment to this university. The athletic program sucked. It was really a diploma. I don't like saying a diploma mill, but there wasn't a lot of on-campus. There wasn't anything that made you prideful of being a Houston Cougar from the time you leave the Southwest Conference to probably 2005 football team. They didn't win the
2006. Maybe.
Yeah, well, 6 won the conference championship. Maybe 05, you kind of look back, things were starting to build a little bit, but even that, you have that whole generation of Cougars just gone. And then, to be honest, I'll say it here.
I know what you're gonna say, and I'm planning on saying something similar, but go for it.
Linking Cougs in the Link NIU or NIL, the Link U, it's terrible. It's awful. It's not a good program. You go through the list of schools and you get wowed, right? You see Auburn, you see Baylor, you're like, oh man. But then if you actually dive next level, we are probably the biggest school that exclusively uses the Link U. It's just not a good program. You get nothing for donating, right? You have to donate, I want to say $500.
Even if you donate $500, like shout out to Harold Easton on Twitter. I saw a thing he did, but I sent it to you. I thought a little more positive than I think you and I are, but I think a very good, just very factual. Like this is what we get for this tier. This is what we get for that tier. And even like the $500 a month, like the stuff, it's maddeningly vague. Like if I'm putting $6,000,
it's like you get a hat.
Yeah, $6,000 a year. Can you give me like? He doesn't even give me more specific perks here. Come on, man. And it felt very generic. Sorry, I'll save my thoughts for later. Yeah, sorry.
And then you look at who you're competing with. You look at the Matador Club, right, from Texas Tech. They do all types of cool stuff on there. Give events, give something. You go to the Link U and you click upcoming events. Sam, how many upcoming events do we have scheduled for the University of Houston on NIL?
I don't want to say zero because that would just make me really sad.
Oh, it's zero, buddy.
It's zero?
It's zero, buddy. It's zero. If you click upcoming event. Zero. Sam, I logged in because I saw one of the tweets and they said, go check out our apparel that benefits NIL. And I was like, you know what? Let's go check it out. Said Lott's name was spelt wrong. What are we doing? Like, he's not the biggest.
He doesn't play a lot, but he's been in this program for 3 years. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And I can tell that it's done via, like on a phone because it autocorrected it to LATHE, which is a lathe, which it probably autocorrected it. But if your job is to run the NIL program for a P4 program, that shouldn't happen. There's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. And every other university that I can think of that's in the Big 12 with us has a separate NIL program than the Link. They use the Link U to just catch somebody when they come through. But U of H is by far the biggest one that has it's running through that program.
Yeah, in the interest of not spending an excessive amount of time on this, I'll just say co-sign your thoughts there. I'll say to Kelvin's comments, like I don't think he does anything unintentionally, and I don't disbelieve his. He did so with like Duarte and Ryan Nico Cougs wrote, so it was good, and I don't disbelieve the stated reasons for doing it, and he said a lot of things that we've said on here that you're behind on getting the power conference money, and that really everybody like. UCF might have a better NIL situation or something like that, but UCF, relative to its Big 12 peers now, is a poor athletic department. Cincy, relative to its Big 12 peers, is a poor athletic department. We are a poor athletic department, and I think maybe he might do the word choice a little bit differently, but I'm not even sure he would. I think again, Kelvin doesn't do things unintentionally here, and I think a message to us fans more broadly about, hey, like. This is the level of giving relative to the performance. And also I believe his stated also reasoning was about, just the ballooning NIL requirements of bringing in elite recruits. And yeah, like that isn't sustainable. And I think most people, even pro NIL people, which I would consider myself among, would agree on that one. I'll just say past tense was a Cougar football NIL donor through Lincoln Cougs. And my complaint about it actually really isn't about the incentives I got, because I knew the amount I was giving at. I'm sorry, like it's good to have small dollar donors, but like I wasn't expecting to have the red carpet rolled out. So that wasn't my complaint, but I think if I was in a much higher giving tier, that would definitely be among my complaints for all the reasons you generally laid out. But just the interface is bad. The chances to do stuff it's nothing if you're a small dollar donor. And it doesn't strike me as a professional operation, as someone that used it and just was, because it was just like I was having stuff like getting my $35 a month donation payment declined. And, again, I'm not bragging about my material wealth in this world, but I'm not concerned that I didn't have $35 in my checking account at the time that payment went through. So it's just like doing stuff like that. And just, again, just feeling like it's a very create by numbers, paint by numbers, whatever you want to call it, NIL setup. It doesn't feel personalized, the fan base. And yeah, it doesn't feel like we're like, this is always going to be cash strapped in terms of donations, state funding, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think this is capturing the full potential of NIL money we could get with something like the Matador Club. And like, I think Eddie Nunez did something like this when he was at New Mexico, but he did. But I'm not blaming him for this. Like, he came in here and Link U was pretty well established. And I don't think that was probably something he felt he had the political clout probably correctly to move against. I don't want to speak for him or have any inside sourcing on that, but like, I would imagine even if he was against it, I'm not saying he is, that wouldn't be something he could really have done a lot about.
Yeah, and just while we've been talking, I went to the Link U and just started clicking around, right? See what schools are involved. I said no one really does it quite like
I saw they announced Ole Miss today.
I take it back. The Aggies run theirs through the Link U, but it's at TexasAggiesUnited.com. Like, it's their own.
They have their own branding on top of it.
Yes. And their page looks really nice. And so I just started clicking around, right? You look here. We have the bronze, the silver, the gold, and the diamond. We have bronze, silver, gold, diamond, platinum. Diamond level, which gets you the exclusive member gift box, which typically includes items such as a polo shirt, baseball cap, water bottle, and other exclusive items. Let me tell you, if I'm giving $500 a month and you give me a water bottle, what are we doing here? I went to Georgia Tech's. Their diamond level is $99 a month. Okay. So then I was like, well, what can we do? So then you go to the Arkansas one. They have different tiers. And guess what, Sam?
What?
They actually changed their names of their tiers to Arkansas related tiers. They have a Woo Pig, right? Level, like, do something. Like, don't just give us the generic build an NIL program. It's just not a good program.
Yeah, I think I'd be fine with if the Link U is still the backbone of it, but it's like more personalized. I think that's my bigger complaint.
Me too.
Like, if you could do like if we're one of the highest profile programs that really heavily uses this, maybe we could have something that looks like more than 10 to 15 minutes was spent thinking about it. Honestly, that's really my last thought on it.
Like, A&M has one, and these are the ideas. As much as you know how much I love the Fighting Texas Ags, like, they just have different ideas going on their on their Link U Aggies United. They literally have something called the Welcome to Pitching Change. It's called Pitching Change, and it rounds up all of your purchases to the nearest dollar, and it takes that difference. So if it's $11.64, you have 36 cents. It takes the 36 cents and it donates it to A&M. It doesn't sound like
I hate them giving the Aggies credit, but that's cool as shit.
Yeah, it's things like that are outside of the box that you're just like, why do we not?
We need to be an outside the box thinking athlete. We have been like on field, but like, I guess not really much off field, really.
Yep. So I thought I just noticed that, you know, they do literally, A&M does the discount cards for places like you see high school bands doing. Like, A&M does that. Like, I'll buy one. I don't even live in Houston. I'll buy one. Okay, like, we got to do something.
Agreed. You want to get back talking ball, Bobby?
Yeah, let's get back talking ball.
Well, thankfully, some more very fun ball to talk about. Saturday night, we were treated to a second straight win by the Cougs over BYU in Provo, Utah, including this time beating future high NBA draft pick AJ DeBonsa. This was one where maybe a little opposite of the UCF game. The exact final score doesn't convey how competitive this one was at times, especially in the second half. But factually, this was also a game where U of H spent the vast majority of it with some kind of lead, and one that big self-pats in the back to both of us here. In real time, we were both still pretty confident this would be a U of H win, even as BYU erased the halftime lead by about 6-7 minutes into the second half. Really, the point this game dramatically changed was a play that anyone who watched this one will remember. Just over 11 minutes to go. Game tied at 52. BYU has the ball. AJ Debonsa has the ball at the top of the key, pretty well past the 3-point line. He's being doubled by Sanak and Tugler at this point. Debonsa fires a pass, pretty good one, to Adi Ahmed, who was looking pretty open right under the basket. Tugler immediately runs from almost the BYU logo at midcourt to block Ahmed's shot under the basket. Incredible play, a play that I don't know if you will see anyone do anything terribly close to that who's not JoJo Tugler this college basketball season. And obviously, it's not that BYU couldn't have possibly come back from there, but you look back, it was a really defining moment. You never saw U of H trail again, and really in the following minutes of this game, separated themselves from BYU, never let the home team truly back in this game. Give me your big takeaways from an awesome Saturday win at BYU, Bobby.
Yeah, man, we said this was going to be a prime example of win by one on the road, and we would be happy with the win. Coug certainly did that, Sam. I think one of the funnier things was looking at this being an 11-point win. I don't know why BYU fouled late. I think I texted you, like, why would you foul there? Sure, we'll take the double-digit win versus the 9-point win over you guys.
Exactly.
Just kind of fun. Just kind of funny. One of those things that most people, if you're looking at like a resume and you're trying to build like a 1 or 2 seed, that's probably not the difference, but 11 points looks better when you're trying to make your case versus 9. And most people aren't going to remember that it was 2 free throws at the end of the game that just kind of was a little bit of junk. So, just kind of funny to think about it that way. I remember neither one of us really knew who was going to guard AJ Debonsa. We were both kind of like, he's a weird kind of matchup for this team. And I thought Sanak did a pretty good job on him. Really seemed like Debonsa did a lot of his damage when Sanak wasn't on the floor. I went back and looked, Sam, how many of his points came when Sanak wasn't on the floor?
Give me 5.
And
I do want to know his total. I do want to know his total points here, just so
he had 28 in
28. Okay. I knew it was 27 or 28. Okay. How many he had when Tugler was on the floor?
Not Tugler, Sanak.
Oh, it's Sanak, excuse me.
Because Sanak was pretty much on him.
Yeah.
Most of the night.
I feel like this is high, but I'm gonna still guess it. 11.
He got 18 of his points when Sanak was out there, 10 when he wasn't out there. It felt like Sanak had him locked up a lot of the game, and I think you and I texted about it that was it Ramon Walker? Who was guarding him when Sanak wasn't on the floor? I'm having a brain fart all of a sudden.
Ramon, you were saying Ramon Walker was at least briefly on him.
Yeah. Not the matchup you were looking for. Not anything against Ramon Walker, just different levels of size and athleticism there.
I mean, real quick, add some color to your stat here. He was on the floor for 29 minutes, so like 18 and 29 versus 10 and 11 minutes. Like obviously he was doing a lot better when he wasn't out there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So no. I appreciate that. I didn't even think to break it down that way. So yeah, I thought Sanak played really well against Debonsa. It got a little squirrely. The game did halfway, midway through the second half, like you said. But you had to know this was kind of coming. You weren't going to win this game by, 25 like you did versus the Central Florida Golden Knights. You knew at home you were going to take a shot from them. You knew they were going to come with a haymaker. You knew you weren't going to blow them out, but you took that best punch and you beat them decisively. Statistically, I think versus Central Florida, just kind of calling out a individual performance, I think Khalifa Sacco had a better game versus Central Florida. But you'd think that if you only looked at the box scores, that guy was incredible Saturday night. He only had 4 rebounds, which if you would have asked me how many rebounds did he have, I would have said 7 or 8. But if you could find me a more important 4 rebounds than the ones Khalifa Sacco got on Saturday, I'd be impressed. I'd love to see him because he killed it on the boards when you needed him to. Just a great performance. We've talked a lot about JoJo getting into foul trouble. He did foul out of this game, but he fouled out really late. he gave you 24 minutes, and like I said, he fouled out late. It's almost like you could combine him and Sacco together as like one player. And if we can get good production out of the Jojo Sacco player, it's going to be pretty good there. All in all, just a great game from the Cougs. I thought everyone played really well on Saturday.
I thought it was really valuable that this team came out hot shooting the first several minutes this one, and that specifically you were getting Sanak involved in the offense early. Not saying this wouldn't have been winnable if you hadn't come out hot. We've seen this team come out slow and outlast so many opponents that you probably lose count naming them all off. But if you've watched enough road Big 12 basketball, you know, even as a team that's still freakishly good at winning on the road, as U of H has been these 2.5 seasons in the league, whenever you play a better team at their gym, there's a risk that opponent starts feeling it early. The crowd, an enormous crowd in this one at the Marriott Center, gets into it. Opponents feed off that crowd, and this becomes a much tougher basketball game to win. And you did see BYU eventually counterpunch. They got to manageable deficits later stages in this first half, made U of H really have to earn it in the final 10 or 11 minutes of regulation after mostly dominating U of H at the start of the second half. But for most of this game, it was BYU doing the chasing. And anytime you can do that on the road, it's unbelievably valuable. You get the crowd out of it for stretches. You do exactly what the Cougars did on Saturday night. In the most general terms, really, U of H won this game by being the tougher and more balanced team. I mean, for the toughness, BYU's big men found out the hard way how difficult it is to score on this year's U of H team near the basket. Their primary big men, Keba Keita and Adi Ahmed, which, not sad that guy didn't stay committed to us. Those two were combined 3 of 10 from the field. And that's not just the work of Tugler and Sanak, as important as those guys are. You went out of your way to shout about. Very happy you did. Sampson and his post-game thoughts went out of his way to shout out Khalifa Sacco, and for very good reason, because you mainly closed this game out with Jojo Tugler and Chris Sanak sitting on the bench with 4 fouls, and really Khalifa Sacco out there fulfilling all your big man duties. And not for the first time this season, you won a game because Khalifa Sacco gave you critical minutes. It was the definition of one of those performances, like you said, that you wouldn't have been as aware of if you didn't watch the actual basketball game, if you were just box score watching. And we talk a lot here about the losses of guys like J1 Roberts and LJ Cryer from last year's team to this year, and rightfully so with Roberts and Cryer, because those were 2 incredible players on a team that, as we know, came so heartbreakingly close to winning the whole damn thing. But looking back on it, Bobby, Javier Francis was such an insane luxury to have as an elite big man coming off the bench who probably could have started for 300 plus, and I might be lowballing it, Division I teams. And that's not Sacco, but it's impossible not to watch him as we get further into Big 12 play and see a guy who's getting better. And now we have multiple big resume wins, Auburn and BYU, where you needed Khalifa Sacco to be at his best, and he did everything you could possibly want in those critical spots. Obviously can't say enough positive things about your 2 most prominent freshmen, Flemings and Sanak. Some of Fleming's finishes on Saturday night got me out of my seat. And I don't want to just hand wave away the greatness we see from this kid whenever he takes the court, but I thought the big differentiator in this basketball game out of those 2 freshmen was Sanak. And Sanak's been every bit as good recently playing his position, which requires different things than Fleming's. I mean, early in the season, we saw flashes, the ability to shoot from deep, but you also saw a guy who, like the vast majority of freshmen, needed some adjustment to the Division I game. I mean, it's not a coincidence that the one game where Sanak was most limited by foul trouble is so far your only loss in Big 12 play, the game at Texas Tech. Like, he has been so valuable, and it's insane how fast he's figuring things out and playing high-level basketball in front of our eyes every time this team takes the court. A lot of very tough tests left for him and the rest of this team on the regular season and postseason schedules, but there is no player, in my opinion, in this roster who's improved more since the calendar turned to 2026 than Chris Sanak, and he's been so valuable for this team. I have an insane stab at Richie Saunders briefly for you, Bobby, that I will leave before I pass the mic to you, if you'll let me.
Yeah, hit me.
He's faced U of H now 4 times, at least one time in each of his 3 seasons, playing for BYU in the Big 12, overlapping with U of H's time. How many times in those 4 has Richie Saunders scored more than 10 points?
I'll go with 1.
0. He had 10, I believe, in the Big 12 tournament loss they took to U of H last season. It just unbelievable. And I think Milos Uzan, I'm not the first person on the U of H internet to say this, but Milos Uzan, who didn't have a good shooting performance this one, I think one of multiple, but no one more responsible for just locking down. I think a guy who could have been a difference maker in this one for you. That's one of those things that might not jump out from this game, but you dig further and yeah, just one of many very exciting things coming from this one.
Yeah, man, totally agree with you there.
I mean, for all the flaws that BYU's displayed in this recent stretch, I was actually watching them lose to Baylor right before we started recording this podcast. No one should doubt that team's offensive acumen. And U of H held them to 66 points on 59 possessions, with over a quarter of their points coming at the free throw line. Yeah. I don't think this will be U of H's most eye-popping defensive performance this season, but considering the strength of the opponent, considering you did it on the road, really, really good.
Absolutely.
But my last thought here, if I can get a bit more takey here for a minute, I've already told you this off air, so I think you know where I'm going here. Absolutely despise the way this BYU team plays. Not saying they aren't skilled, not saying AJ Debonsa won't be one of the two best players I see on an opposing team this season, but you could just tell they have absolutely no dog in them. They were so obviously trying to play that free throw ball kind of basketball, the kind of basketball that everyone complains about the NBA just really being heavy on. This was on full display. And Debonsa is a supremely talented player who I can't imagine will or should wait to hear his name called past the second or third pick of the next draft. But that guy's not a dog. That's not a guy who's going to win anything of real consequence in his college career. Maybe his NBA career, but not in his college career. He's the guy who will stat pile like he did when he dropped 40 plus against a bad Utah team a couple weeks ago, but in this big game, missed 5 free throws against U of H. And their head coach too, Kevin Young, has the most thinks he's above the college game kind of attitude. The trying to draw up a play during a stoppage that clearly wasn't a timeout, and Kingston and the guys just standing in their huddle was genuinely one of the funniest, probably the funniest in-game moment of the current season. One of the funniest I've ever witnessed in a U of H game. And I don't want to overstate my criticism. Young's first team at BYU went to the second weekend of the tournament for the first time since 2011. He's not a bad coach, but I would imagine just with Debonsa and Rob Wright, BYU is paying more NIL money than U of H's entire roster, maybe just Debonsa. And I'll be surprised if they're out one and done wherever they do end up, probably in the NCAA tournament. If we had BYU twice on the schedule, Bobby, I'd be so insanely confident that U of H would wax their ass at Fertitta, just like we did last year. Like that was my big takeaways. Not a skilled team, but not a team with any dog.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think my takeaway from the game was I saw quite possibly the worst call. And look, U of H actually ended up better for having this call missed, because you ended up getting an and one. Missing that goaltend is quite possibly
insane.
I've watched. I said this on Twitter. I watch a lot of sports. I could not think of a missed call more absurd than that one, considering they did it 3 times. And somebody brought up the James Harden when he dunked it and it went through the net and kind of flew out. That one's up there with this missed call. But it's an absolutely atrocious missed call there. Like, again, U of H, and somebody tried to mention like the Alabama game a couple of years ago when
this was much worse. There was actually a somewhat reasoned case to be made that wasn't a goaltend.
Yes. This was the worst missed call that I can think of. It was so blatantly obvious, and I'm not somebody who complains about refs, dude. That's just a bad call. The Big 12 refs here. Let me just go to BYU Kansas last night. That travel that they missed was almost as bad. Just a bad weekend and Monday for Big 12 refs there.
They had that, UH challenged it successfully ultimately, but there was like an out of bounds that was clearly off a BYU big man's leg. Yes. That again, like would have been impactful in a win or loss, like probably not, but just how did you miss this on the floor? Like you should have the best angle of this other than guys on the court. How did you miss this? Like I'm just confused.
That was my thing. That was my thing is like
you have that angle.
You can't miss that. Like he goaltended 3 times. He got it coming down. It was in the cylinder. They touched the rim in the net. Like how do you miss it 3 times? Like okay, he touched the net, we'll call the goaltending, and that didn't. Or you got to call one of the three. I don't know, and that's why he didn't get, and that's why Sampson doesn't get teed up there
Yeah.
for yelling as hard as he is, because sometimes you just know. If you've ever done any kind of officiating before, you just go, yeah, I deserve this this one here. So
we will fast forward a little bit to the future to hear from Sam and Bobby in approximately 3 hours and what they thought of was hopefully a dominant U of H win over Utah. Thank you, Sam and Bobby from the past. This is Sam and Bobby from the future talking about a future that thankfully does not include a Houston Cougar men's basketball loss to the Utah Runnin' Utes tonight in Salt Lake City. A 66-52 win that I don't think will have anything really memorable about it, save for Emmanuel Sharp's great three-point shooting performance, which included him officially setting the program record for most career three-point makes. So that's really cool. Otherwise, kind of an anonymous effort. Looked a little sleepy in some areas, but you're gonna have those in this season. Like that's my biggest takeaway here. Like wasn't Kingston Fleming's best night, wasn't Chris Sinak's best night, but that's just gonna sometimes happen. And frankly, on the road, game never in doubt. Not gonna be one of this team's best performances of the season, but also probably not one of the worst. So I know that's not very striking or emotional recap of this one, but I mean this one was well and truly over for at least half of the basketball game, Bobby. Like it was clear that U of H was going to be. It was close early. And I'll give Utah, specifically Keanu Dawes, credit for it. It was just absolutely playing out of his mind early. Had a really awesome dunk against the Cougars, but I just kept saying to myself early on when it was close, Utah's doing nothing here that they can actually sustain. And before the first half was even over, we kind of saw that happen and saw the Cougs take control of this game. And again, not the sexiest effort this team will have this season, but win where it was never in doubt, which I think was really just our biggest hope for this one.
Yeah, I mean, there was one lead change in the game, and that was when Utah went down 3-2 to the Cougs after a guess who? Kidding, it was Milos who made the first 3-pointer of the game. Tricked you. But no, once the Cougs took the 3-2 lead, it was done there. Kind of looking at the game flow and just what I thought of the game overall. You had 2 5-minute plus scoring droughts for Utah. That worked, Sam. Not a basketball expert by any means. I'm not a big basketball X's and O's kind of guy, but I do know that if you hold your opponent scoreless for a quarter of the basketball game, things tend to end well for you there.
Generally good for the team holding scoreless.
Yes.
Not so much the team being held scoreless.
Yes. So Emmanuel Sharp, 27 points. Just what a performance. 8 of 13 from beyond the arc. Just a crazy number. And to be honest, he slowed down.
Yeah,
but
he hit 6 of his first 7, I think.
Yeah, there was just when Emmanuel gives you 27, nobody else goes double digits. That's all you needed. I think 52 for Utah is actually is higher than I kind of expected it would have ended about halfway through the second half. It didn't even look like they were going to break 50, but then you could see the Cougs kind of took their foot off the gas, and you let them back in there.
Yeah, it's almost like in a way like a good thing that, because I think Kelvin's gonna have plenty of stuff from this game that he didn't like and is gonna point out to the guys that they're gonna work on. Like, not that I would have been opposed to like a 35-40 point win tonight or something like that, but marathon, not a sprint. Like,
yeah,
margin's really not that important unless it's like, oh, hey, like you almost lost to these guys, something like that. Like, this reminded me so much of an American conference game, and not like the American conference games against like Memphis or Cincy.
Memphis, yeah.
Like the one where it's just like, even if we win this one on the road, we're not going to get a ton of credit for it because it's fucking USF or it's Tulsa. One of the seasons they were pretty bad or something like that. You just gotta survive this. Like you just gotta survive this and not really let this opponent believe for any moment they could really win this game, which I think you mostly did.
Yeah, I think you did pretty much the entire game. I think you could definitely tell. You said it earlier, and I thought it was a really good point by you. It was kind of a sleepy game. This was absolutely a team that traveled on Friday out to Utah and haven't been home since since then that they've been gone. What is that? 4 days now. Think about like even your vacation, right? After day 4, you're kind of like, I could really use my own bed at this point. Like even if the hotel
Exactly.
bed I'm staying in is nicer than my bed, I just want to be able to like take a shower in my shower and like use my shampoo and I'm used to that water pressure, that shower where I know exactly where to put the handle to make sure it's the perfect temperature. Like I know it sounds weird, but after a little bit, you're
No,
kind of like,
totally understand it.
I just want to be home. I know I'm on vacation, and for the Cougs, they're practicing in a different facility. They practice at the Utah Jazz facility. At some point, you just want to be in your locker room. Like I want to go to class. Like I remember being in college and just being during the winter break. It was kind of long, and I was like, kind of getting back to Houston and. I kind of just want to go to a class and just get back in this rhythm of things. And you could definitely see that sleepiness kind of coming forward with the Cougs, or coming to the forefront for the Cougs this game at times.
Yeah, I think. Is there anything else from this game that you think is worth discussing? Very, very funny, by the way. You mentioned that earlier. Milos made the first 3-pointer last time in this game that a non-Emmanuel Sharp guy made a 3-pointer, which is both a positive reflection on Emmanuel Sharp and what an unbelievable performance he had tonight shooting the ball for the Cougs, and also just like, oh, you didn't get much from anyone else here. But again, Emmanuel Sharp
You
was so
didn't
good, he
need
didn't
it.
really need it. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when Emmanuel just kind of looking here, Emmanuel Sharp is, oh no, I take that back. I was doing the quick little Milo shot more than 2 3-pointers, Sanak shot more than 2, and then Isaiah Harwell shot more than 2. But other than that, like you kind of look at the stats and you get a little concerned because you only shot 40, not only, but you shot 43% from the field and Utah shot 44%.
Yeah.
But then you can go, oh, wait a minute, we had 12 offensive boards to their 7. We put up 15 more shots than them. Yeah, you outplayed them in every sense of the word there.
Yeah, healthy amount of garbage time also in Utah stats, which isn't to say, again, like what I said earlier, I think Sampson will find a fair amount from this game that he believes should be done better. And that's why this is a consistently excellent program, is because even off a ho-hum win, Kelvin's gonna find teachable moments from this one, which I think is good. Marathon, not a sprint in the season, and better that the non-Emmanuel Sharp components of this team didn't play their best against Utah than almost anyone else on the road.
Yeah,
Schedule
pretty much.
out.
Exactly. You'd rather see it now than any other game.
Thanks, Sam and Bobby from the future, for recapping us on the Utah game. We have 2 opponents to preview from the week to come of Cougar basketball, and it's kind of crazy how different the outlook is between these 2 teams. We'll start with the K-State Wildcats, who will be coming to the Fertitta Center on Saturday afternoon, Valentine's Day. Don't say this lightly. Not a Big 12 men's basketball program out there with worse vibes around it right now than K-State. Not especially close. I mean, you have other candidates. Utah is the clear worst team in the league, but that's an alum head coach in his first season of a long-term build. Proc's not fun this year, but not a team falling way below anyone's expectations. Arizona State, in what's going to certainly be Bobby Hurley's last year there, isn't great, but I'd imagine most ASU fans are at least excited about being in a post-Hurley era soon, and ASU is at least marginally better than their preseason expectations. I know Baylor fans aren't very thrilled about their season, but entirely new roster, and I think Scott Drew's rightfully earned a lot of positive goodwill among that fan base. I don't think that situation's gotten toxic yet. And K-State wasn't a dark horse preseason Big 12 pick or anything, but they started the year 61st nationally in KenPom. Before the season are now 30 spots worse. Really only a 3-point home win over Utah, keeping them from being winless in Big 12 play right now. And it just screams at you in the face that this team is much worse than the sum of its parts. They have 3 guys who are by definition above average 3-point shooters, though I will note one of them, Abdi Bashir, likely be hurt for most of Big 12 play this season. And in addition to those 3, a guy in PJ Haggerty, who's been one of the better scorers in the country each of his 3 seasons in college, but they're mostly not doing anything very well besides shooting the 3-point ball. But really where you see the sum of the parts not adding up the most is on defense. K-State's giving up more offensive rebounds than anyone in the Big 12 since conference play started. Only UCF and Utah have been worse at allowing opponents to score in the paint, not to mention fouling at an eye-watering clip since starting Big 12 play. And it's one thing to be a team like U of H that sends opponents to the line a lot because you play a very physical brand of defense. But the Wildcats sending opponents to the free throw line a bunch and all, by all metrics being a bad defensive team, I think that's kind of a worst of all worlds situation. We follow a decent number of K-State people because we follow at least some people from basically every Big 12 school to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And there's been no fan base less happy about their men's basketball situation than Wildcat fans. Since he's close, but I would say K-State's the top one right there. I mean, their head coach, Jerome Tang, a little over a week ago, after one of the worst home losses in their entire program's history against Iowa State, Tang gets on the podium and says after the game, I'm not disappointed at all. And he keeps alluding to some unspoken adversity this team has gone through, but not elaborating on it at all. I mean, coming from a guy who during his awesome first season after they beat Kansas said that this program and its fans should expect to win, I mean, it's got to be maddening. And that hasn't necessarily been a program, K-State, that's been an easy place to win. But, I mean, last 18, 19 years, they've been to the tournament more often than they haven't. And look now pretty locked on to be one of the conference's worst teams 3 years after making the Elite Eight, with two slightly better but still disappointing seasons than this one in between those. I mean, it's just a bad trend line. They spent big money last year for Coleman Hawkins out of the portal. He was a flop. They spent big money for PJ Haggerty and a mostly new roster for this season. It's been a flop. And I was going to say, it seems like a no-brainer they're going to fire Tang after the season. Bobby, thanks to the On3 subscription that you bought us that we both use, I found this out today. Do you know what they would owe Jerome? You don't know this, obviously, but do you know what they would owe Jerome Tang if they fired him in March?
I gotta say, didn't he get a big extension after that Elite Eight
He
run,
did.
didn't he?
It's related.
And so I feel like it's probably 15, 20 mil.
I mean, you threw out two numbers there, and technically you're kind of in the middle. $18.7 million.
God.
And I'm sure that's not a
And
lump
they've
sum.
gotten worse every year.
Yeah, they've gotten worse every year. And again, they could probably spread that $18.7 million over a number of years, but that's so much money to be paying someone not to coach. That's over $6 million more, I think, than U of H had to pay to buy out Dana Holgerson. And I get that.
I was going to say that's a football coach buyout.
That's a football coach buy. That's why I thought it was. I was reading the article. I thought it was going to be like, I'd seen alluded to that was a decent sum, but I was thinking like 7-8 million, over double that. Insane. And I get that he got that extension off of one of their best ever seasons, but I mean, it's pretty easy now to armchair quarterback and say that was an insanely bad decision. Bobby, I've talked enough about this bad team. What would you like to share about the Wildcats?
Yeah, man, I was in my notes. I knew you had some Jerome Tang notes, and so I saved my Jerome Tang thoughts. They've gotten worse. Like it. Sometimes you see a team go, and then there's a small dip, and you're like, oh, they'll bounce back. You know, they had their big run, and then 2 years later they come back. They just get progressively worse every single year. Yeah, it's the Wildcats aren't particularly bad in one area. Kind of looking at them, they're not really good at anything. They're not like the worst at others. Like you just look, their effective field goal percentage that they're giving up is 204th in the country.
Ugh.
Not great. That's ugly. They give up a ton of offensive rebounds. They're 299th in surrendering offensive rebounds, and that bodes well for the Cougs. You saw the Cougs really start to take advantage of that in the BYU game. It was a big turning point. So if the Cougs come back, bounce back on that's going to be a problem for Kansas State. They just don't do anything well. You know what I mean? Like they turn the ball over on offense. They're 180th in the country. They shoot the three decently. They're 36th in the country in 3-point percentage. And they have a decent, they run some tempo. But the thing I kind of looked at is, what do they do when the other team has the ball? Are they able to get teams to speed up, right? I talk a lot about that when I talk about tempo. This is probably the fourth time I've mentioned it this year. But like, they rank 140th in tempo allowed, basically. So it's not like they're speeding teams up to be super quick to have to match their tempo to get you uncomfortable. They go down, they jack up shots quick, and then you can come down and run your offense. So I just find that very interesting. So yeah, they don't seem to sucker teams into that. Kind of looking at their schedule, Sam, I was like, man, what? They're 90th in KenPom. Who's their best win? Sam, who do you think their best win is?
I know they beat Creighton in non-conference. I'm going to say Creighton.
According to KenPom, Creighton is number 73. Because
they're only Big 12 wins Utah, so it's not a conference one.
Yeah. Tulsa.
Oh, yeah, Tulsa's pretty decent this year.
Tulsa's leading the American, but other than that, they haven't beat a bubble team. And if you look at Tulsa, if they don't win the American, if the winner of the, that's a one big
that's not an at-large team. It's a good American team. It's not an at-large team.
Yeah. So they haven't even really come close to beating an at-large team. So the player to kind of look out for is PJ Haggerty. He's going to make some plays. 23. He averages 23 a night. This may be one of those Emmanuel Sharp doesn't show up in the box score, but plays incredible defense kind of night. You're just going to probably put Sharp on him because Sharp, I would argue, of your three guards that play the most, is probably your best defender. I think Sampson has come out and said that before. You put him on Haggerty and just say, go lock him up. And what you give us on offense is going to be a bonus there.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the most dismissive I am of a team that plays at the Fertitta Center this year, because I think K-State fans would agree. A team worthy being dismissive, a team worthy of just not believing they can do anything this year, because they really haven't. The real challenge next week, and certainly a game with a good argument for being the toughest on the remaining Cougar schedule, is going to come next Monday night as the Cougs take on the current number 5 Iowa State Cyclones on the road at Hilton Coliseum. Hilton's always a tough place to go, even in seasons where ISU was, middling to decent Big 12 program. Against a ISU team that has legitimately been one of the very best of the sport, winning at Hilton feels like a downright Herculean task. Bobby, tell us what you've learned about this year's Cyclone team.
Yeah, like you said, this is the most exciting game. Next Monday, it's actually the big Monday game. And I don't know if you saw this, Sampson kind of went out and was a little mad that U of H didn't have a big Monday game. He's like,
I get it, man. We won the conference the last 2 years,
Yeah. Oh, I'm not mad at Sampson for saying it. How do we not get a big Monday game? We got to go on the road for 2 of them. You can't throw us a bone and give us one of those. You know what I mean? But yeah, big Monday game. When I look at this one, all I can think of when I first opened Ken Palm and started to do my analysis, all I could think of was the Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other. That's really what this game kind of feels like. I think if this game's in Fertitta, I feel a lot more confident about it. And I would venture to say the clone fans are probably more confident that it's it. They would say the same thing about having to come to Fertitta. So I don't think I'm being blatantly disrespectful. I think if this game takes place in Houston, Houston's probably the favorite going into the game. The two things that immediately struck some fear in me: Iowa State's ability to knock down the three, which U of H has been susceptible to this year. Teams are shooting at a very high percentage against U of H from 3. That being said, they haven't taken a ton of threes. I don't feel like we've gotten beat a lot by the 3 this year. But if the high pressure defense that Sampson likes to bring does leave you a little open to 3-pointers, especially if they can start passing the ball around. And surprise, surprise, Iowa State's really good at knocking down threes. And then the other thing was their ability to get offensive rebounds. The Cougs, it's gotten better over the last couple of games, but the Cougs have been susceptible to letting teams get offensive boards against them. And really, that kind of shows in their 3-point percentage that Iowa State is shooting, right? If you get offensive rebounds, it's usually there's an open guy out on the perimeter because everyone's crashing to get the defensive board. You can kick it out, hit the open 3. So that is a little concerning going forward into this game. It's definitely something to watch. Forward Milan Momcilovic.
Woo!
Sorry.
Good job.
Milan Momcilovic is their leading scorer, but the focus is definitely going to be Joshua Jefferson. I think Ken Palm has him as the number 2 player of the year right now, behind Boozer at Duke. He averages 17 a game, and he's shooting 50% from the field. That's an insane number to shoot 50% from the field. He averages 8 boards a game as well, 7.7. I rounded it up to 8. The guy is good. Another big matchup. I'm kind of curious how you're going to play him like you did AJ DeBonta. Do you put Sinak on him like you did DeBonta, or do you just kind of tell JoJo to go guard him and put Sinak on Momcilovic? Or are you going to run some kind of leave Momcilovic out there, but Momcilovic is shooting 50% from 3. So, Jefferson feels athletic enough from what I've seen of him, athletic enough that you probably want to put Stanek on him and you don't want to put JoJo on him. So that might be the matchup that you see. I think a big reason this Clones team is so good is Momcilovic can nail it from three. So you have a big who's got to go out and guard him and make sure he doesn't get the shot off that clears the lane for Jefferson. Classic example of spreading the floor out and getting open shots. So it's going to be a stressful night. Monday night will be very stressful, but it should be a good game. We should have fun watching this game. If it's a blowout either way, I think one of the fan bases, one might hit the panic button a little bit and go, whoa, didn't see that coming. If this game's more than a 5-point game late, I'd be very, very surprised. So I something went sideways for one of these programs that night on Monday night. If this is more than a 5 or 6 point game at the under 4 media timeout.
Like U of H, the Clones really aren't insanely good at keeping opponents from making shots. So the Cougars have been better at defending the 2-point than the Clones, but they do other stuff defensively so well. They still profile as an elite defensive team, and that elite defense has always been there under TJ Otzelberg at Iowa State, even his earlier seasons at Ames, where we'll say the Cyclones were a bit more challenged offensively. Now they've become an elite offensive team, and you still see the just blue collar defense that's always been a hallmark of them. You've seen them transform from a tough upper half of the Big 12 team to, I'd say, one of the very small handful of teams in college basketball in contention for a 1 seed. Like you, what gives me those heartburn is they're an elite 3-point shooting team. And if U of H has had any kryptonite defensively this year, it's elite 3-point shooting teams like Iowa State. I mean, Momcilovic shooting 53% on threes doesn't feel real. And it's not just because, he just picks his spots and doesn't really volume shoot. He's the country's top 3-point shooter while taking a very high volume of shots from beyond the arc, which feels like an impossible combination. Unfortunately, I do remember the absurd shot he hit against us 2 seasons ago in Ames, the last time U of H lost back-to-back to a Big 12 game. So I guess I can't be surprised with 2 more seasons in a great development program like this one that he's transformed from a good, intriguing freshman into one of the very best offensive weapons in college basketball. And yeah, there's no player the Cougs will see really all season who's a more multifaceted offensive weapon than Joshua Jefferson. I was there in person with Dustin last year for these teams lone head-to-head at Fertitta. Jefferson had one of the most insane stat lines I've seen that didn't involve a lot of scoring. 4 points, but also 8 rebounds, 7 steals, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. And like Momcilovic, he's become an even more insanely consistent scoring threat this season. Also has 4 10-plus assist performances this season. Hasn't scored less than double digits once in the current season. I think if you love great strength-on-strength matchups, Jefferson going against Tugler or Stanek is about as good as you're going to see in college basketball this season. They also have a super tough 4th-year starting point guard, Tamin Lipsey, who I think is going to challenge Kingston Flemings and the Cougar guards defensively as much as anyone we've seen to date. And nobody would confuse Lipsey for a prodigious scorer like Momcilovic or Jefferson, but he does enough there, along with the awesome defense, to be one of the very best point guards in this conference. They did a good job adding to the roster too. They have 2 new faces in their starting lineup, freshman Killian Torre and Virginia transfer Blake Buchanan. They've been really incredible adds, starting lineup mainstays in each of their first seasons in Ames. I mean, retention development's been a big part of what Otzelberger and his staff have done there, but they're also unbelievably good at portal scouting, even though they don't do it super often, which frankly is probably what most programs would really like to have be their setup. Like develop well, identify well out of the high school ranks, and then add from the portal where you need it. Jefferson's another guy. He started his college career at St. Mary's. Like they're clearly very good at evaluating in this program. I mean, it's hard to find a weakness with their team. They don't shoot free throws well, which I think is largely due to Jefferson, but that's not a huge part of what they do offensively. I mean, like I said earlier, they aren't freakishly good at keeping opponents from making shots, but more than good enough to potentially hold down the Cougs on Monday night at Hilton. They don't have a super deep bench, but you could probably also say that for the Cougs. Not wildly optimistic about winning this one because, I mean, breaking news, top 5 teams are generally very hard to beat in their own gym. I like that this game is coming off what I'm expecting to be a pretty dominant Saturday home win over K-State, but also not going to pretend like that makes a massive difference. I mean, if the Cougs can find a way to win this one, it will be a win that truly announces to the college basketball world that U of H should be firmly in the 1 seed discussion. And if you lose, I really don't think it negatively changes anyone's perception of what this Cougar team is. That's just Iowa State at home. I mean, it's the rare game where I feel like U of H men's basketball is truly playing with house money in terms of game outcome, that you can play loose because you genuinely, it's the rare occasion where U of H isn't some kind of favorite to win this basketball game, which I think it's got to be at least a little freeing, even if I don't think that entirely makes up for everything, you need to have to beat this team that hasn't lost in their home court this season and is playing like a top 5 basketball team.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of funny as we keep calling as we keep saying what their arena is. You play at the Marriott Center and Hilton. Just kind of funny that you play at both of those. I'm sure it's a different Hilton, but very funny if you really think about it that you're playing at Hilton and Marriott Center. Just little thing that I put 2 and 2 together on real quick.
Yeah, hope our points are good after this roadie. Up next for the second week in a row, we have a Cougar bat and ball sports season to preview as the Cougar baseball team opens their 2026 season this Friday through Monday, playing in the Puerto Rico Challenge. And we'll find time to talk about the specific weekend's matchups before this is over, but we'll start a little bit more big picture here previewing the season. Cougars are coming off a 2025 season where they did improve both in win total and finish in the Big 12 standings off of a inaugural season of the conference where the program finished near dead last in the standings and missed qualifying for the Big 12 championships, which the team did participate in last season, beating K-State before TCU decisively ended the Cougar season at Globe Life Park. What makes it harder to be optimistic going forward is that a lot of the best players off last year's team have graduated. Antoine Jean had one of the best starting pitcher seasons in U of H program history, and really of anyone in the college baseball season last year. He got drafted by the Rockies and was out of eligibility anyway. You also lost your next 2 best pitchers from last year's team, Andres Perez and Brady Fuller, who were both out of eligibility. I mean, it's not all bad news. Most of your best hitters from a season ago are back for 2026, but as we found out the hard way with this program specifically, you need a certain amount of reliable pitching to succeed, and U of H hasn't really had that outside of select individuals, guys like Antoine Jean and Rob Gasser over recent seasons, really since before COVID. Not coincidentally, U of H's last tournament appearance was before COVID, 2018. And this is Todd Whitting's 16th season in charge. And the highs from 2014 to 2018 in this program were so awesome to experience as a Cougar fan, as somebody who likes college baseball generally. But even if U of H makes the NCAA tournament this season, not something I think either of us are very optimistic about, we'll have tied for the second longest drought from the tournament in program history. And you won't hear me say a bad word about Todd Whitting, the guy, because he deserves, I would say, still better than some of the personal attacks I've seen him get, not to mention all the program off-field improvements that have come from his legwork specifically and his ability to bring in donations. But it's also not common that in a program with a history of at least semi-regularly making the NCAA postseason like this program, that you get 7 or 8 seasons of not making the tournament. And for most of those seasons, not being especially close to being an NCAA postseason level team. And the team was picked 12th out of 14 in the preseason poll of the Big 12, which, looking at this team now, I don't think is entirely unfair. And I'm not upset Whitting has been given a long metaphoric runway to figure it out. Was kind of shocked at the extension that Chris Pesman gave him 3 years ago. Don't think I'm being unfair in saying that barring a major improvement this season, that we might not see an extension coming. And I hate to kind of start on a downer with Cougar baseball, but I don't think, Bobby, you could tell the story of where this program is right now without just saying generally where we are right now and setting the table kind of like I have.
Yeah, I mean, you got to kind of address the elephant in the room, right? Which is, this is absolutely a tournament or bust year for Coach Whitting. Even if you make the tournament, you still kind of have some questions. I think, not to dive into this, I think if he does make the tournament, there's a good chance that he does stay because of his off-field ability to raise funds and fundraise and kind of the general vibes that he just kind of, I feel like everyone generally, if he makes the tournament this year, everyone will be like, yeah, okay.
I think you're underestimating how not good towards the program a lot of Cougar fans feel, but I agree with you, to be clear. I agree with both the keeping around and also your general assessment that would be what happens. Sorry.
Yeah. And honestly, it felt like it was kind of that way last year, but it ended up not being that way. Didn't last year kind of feel like a tournament or bust kind of year? You didn't exactly think you were going to make the tournament, but it really led to this year where his seat couldn't be hotter if he tried. Here we are. I think everyone realizes what we just talked about that hot seat and everything. And you can see changes all around with the new coaching staff. You bring in Kyle Cheeseborough. He was he's been to Omaha a couple of times with Louisville. Was on the Mississippi State staff before Houston, which gets you excited, but then you realize that staff was let go. So you're kind of getting a guy who's on a bounce back, not necessarily a bad thing, but you see, oh, you got an SEC coach in here. You were able to take him, and it's like, no, not really. And then you have a new pitching coach in Matt Gardner from Texas Tech. He stepped down after his staff had an ERA of 6.49 his last year at Tech. He was on the Tech staff that went to Omaha 4 times. Both hires really feel like low floors, but very, very, very high ceilings in what they've done. They're the kind of hires you make when you need to win now. You take the big risks to kind of win now. That is kind of my overall thoughts of what this program is heading into 2026. It's tournament or bust, and your coaching staff hires, I don't hate them, right? They're not bad hires. I think they're okay, right? But you're getting a guy who had that staff ERA of 6.49. That's not great. Guy who he stepped down, air quotes there, from his Texas Tech position, but I think it's pretty obvious what happened there. You see what happened with with Cheeseborough. It's hard to get excited.
We'll start by looking at the part of the team that I think we have the most questions about, the pitching staff. The Cougs got some standout individual performances last season, none bigger than Antoine Jean, we already mentioned here, but on the whole, the pitching staff had a 5.52 ERA. Previous pitching coach Woody Williams left after the season, replaced by someone you just mentioned, Matt Gardner, who had been on the Texas Tech staff for the previous 12 seasons, overseeing pitching there. And his time did overlap with a number of very, very good Red Raider seasons, College World Series appearances, number of guys getting drafted to pro ball. But I mean, the reason he was available to take this job is simply Tech struggled pretty badly with pitching the past few seasons. Not that Gardner doesn't have good items on his resume. He also played for and coached earlier in his career under Frank Anderson, the architect of the best years of pitching U of H has had under Todd Whitting, but other guys had good resumes too. Terry Rooney, Kyle Bunn, Sean Kenny, and Woody Williams before Gardner, and the end result wasn't appreciably different for the staff, even though you did have some standout individuals like Jean, Rob Gass, or Justin Murray, I haven't mentioned yet, mixed in there. It wasn't ever really a staff-wide, I think, a staff that could consistently, Cade Satelli as well, I think 2 seasons ago, but never really, again, a staff that could be relied upon outside of a couple of guys to really give you quality innings. This year's staff does return a handful of guys who have flashed promise, but all who finished with ERAs above 5 last year. Richie Roman, who had 7 saves, the Cougs closer to start the year, but finished last season with a 6.31 ERA. Clearly has swing and miss stuff, but I think still a lot to figure out. And he is the returner I'm going to talk about this group that intrigues me the most, but very high floor, low ceiling situation. It sounds like Roman will open the season as the Cougs Friday starter, though they have not announced a rotation yet. Paul Schmitz is also a safe bet to be back in the weekend rotation. His 4th year in the program, had a promising start, but hasn't taken that next step after that promising start. Chris Sinta's back after being your top lefty relief guy last season outside of Antoine Jean, as well as Alex Solis, who started some games last season. Kendall Hoffman, tall, lanky righty, who I think flashed some promise last season as a freshman, but not really much coming improved from the transfers either. Out of the transfer, I think Jackson Baker coming from USC intrigues me the most. Yes, solid 3.54 ERA and 14 relief appearances for the Trojans. Essentially his debut college season after playing very little for Bama 2 seasons ago. Don't know if that was injury related or not. Originally from the Austin area, was a big time high school recruit. Intriguing stuff, but also had astronomical walk and hit by pitch numbers in 20 to 30 innings at USC. Tyler Bryant threw a bunch of innings at Northwestern State last year, but had a 5+ ERA and higher in previous seasons. Not wild about his chances to improve against much tougher conference. Ryan Rodriguez comes in from Ole Miss back in his home state for his final college season. Love his strikeout per 9 numbers as a lefty bullpen guy, but probably not going to be one of your innings leaders if his career history is any indicator. If this is going to be a good pitching staff, Bobby, you're counting on pretty large number of guys having their best college season. Not impossible. Guys can do that late on. I mean, last year we saw Antoine Jean and to a lesser extent Brady Fuller finish their college seasons with the best seasons of their careers. But for that many guys, it doesn't feel especially likely either, you know?
Yeah, that was kind of my big thing is if you want to see this pitching staff be even remotely decent, you're going to have some guys who have shown some promise actually show that promise, right? Some guys who have given you glimpses. You need more than a glimpse from them this year. You need full on looks, right? Like you mentioned a couple of guys that I kind of have written here. Richie Roman, a lot of hype around him coming out of fall practice. I don't know. You probably read the same thing I did from D1 baseball about his fastball topping out and how excited they were for him. A guy who has looked good in flashes, but just hasn't really put it together. There's a chance he's your Friday starter. And if you're depending on Richie Roman, you need him to be a lot better on Friday nights than he was, as a pitcher last year. So a lot of guys that you just need them to be substantially better. Maybe not even their best college year, or the best year of their career, but you just need them to be better. I do think Jackson Baker from USC is somebody who kind of intrigues me. He could even move to a starter position on this team. But yeah, man, this is a rough go of it with the pitching staff. You're kind of doing what you do with softball, and you're like, well, I can see some pieces here, I guess. I don't exactly know what it's gonna look like, but if I squint, I can find something pretty good here.
A little more of a sunny outlook when it comes to the Cougar hitters, where the only real standout from last year who isn't back is Connor McGinnis, who was taken the 10th round of last summer's draft by the Yankees. Trey Broussard is your most serious pro prospect among any group of players in this roster. Had a promising first Cougar campaign where he hit 295 with some pop. He had 7 dingers, stole 31 bases while being a plus defensive center fielder. Followed up that promising opening season with a big summer in the Cape Cod League where he was MVP of their All-Star game. And one of the nicest surprises of last year is someone who was also back, Xavier Perez, who had not gotten on the field in 2 seasons prior at Texas State and was by the numbers your best all-around hitter last year. By a wide margin, led the team in RBI, tied for the team leading home runs, led the team in extra base hits, and was the only Cougar who played semi-regularly besides McGinnis to finish the season with a 300 or better batting average. The player who I think his improvement will have the biggest impact on this lineup if it happens is Cade Clemmy. Going into the last season, he had a really strong junior college resume. Looked like he could be a 1-year D1 to the pros kind of player and just wasn't. He's still tied for the team lead in home runs with Perez, leads all returns with 33 walks. So you do like to see that hitter's eye. Enough flash of the power and plate discipline to be intrigued, but I'm also after last season not taking it as a given that Clemmy's going to turn into Joe Davis this season. Would love that. Would be very happy about that development, but not taking it as a given. The only other lineup regulars who are back are your shortstop Tyler Cox and catcher Riley Jackson. Cox hit for better average, but didn't do much in terms of extra base power, though I would say his numbers weren't bad playing a premium defensive position. Jackson struggled to hit badly for average, but did at least walk a decent amount and hit for occasional pop. For your new faces, Cougs brought in a pair of Texas Tech transfers, Antonelli Salvatore, who started 36 games, mostly DH for the Red Raiders last season, batted 288 in 139 at bats. Salvatore was also previously a junior college All-American, and also Dylan Maxey, who started 77 games, mostly at catcher in 3 seasons prior to this one at Texas Tech. Wouldn't be surprised if either guys are lineup regulars for the Cougs in the early season. Easton Winfield comes in from UT Austin, where he was never really able to break through there and become a full-time contributor on one of the country's best teams, but 2 seasons ago had one of the best freshman seasons in the country when he was playing at UL Monroe. Justin Charrington was a JUCO first-team All-American in the NJCAA's highest classification, playing for Yavapai College in Arizona, hit 12 home runs and 71 ribbies last season. I mean, JUCO to D1's a decent jump, but he's a big 6'6" first baseman who's able to hit for contact and power at the lower level of college. I think intriguing guy. Carter Sintek hit 358, was all Summit League last year for South Dakota State. Expect to see him competing for a lineup spot. Didn't hit for massive power, and obviously will be taking a big step up in competition, but an intriguing new face. Another guy we might see, Landon Williams, who hit 369 in his first Division I season up the road at Prairie View last year. Harder to tell out of the freshman who's going to be an impact guy, but I've seen Blake Field's name come up as a freshman who could be in the lineup early. It was a 14th round draft pick of the Astros, who's still elected to play college baseball, so it's always exciting to need a prospect at that level in your program. more reasons to feel confident that this team will hit more than it can pitch. But the rub is that neither feels like a locked in guarantee right now. And that's why we're previewing the team who was picked 12th out of 14 in the Big 12. Bobby, what are your thoughts on the hitters?
Yeah, just you mentioned pretty much everybody that I had written down here. One that I think I'm a little bit higher on than you is going to be Tyler Cox. I think if you look at his stats, like you kind of, when we were reviewing games and things like that, you kind of were like, yeah, he's fine. He's fine. But defensively, he made some plays that if you were watching the game, you were like, oh no, that's pretty good. He was very good at a premium defensive position. I think his bat's good enough. I expect him to be your starter at shortstop and to hold that down. You hope that maybe the bat progresses just a little bit more. It's how he plays isn't sexy, but the defense more than makes up for it. The joke I have written here is a real JoJo Tugler of the diamond, where you're going to get some defensive plays that make you very happy, but maybe offensively you're hoping for a little bit more. But yeah, that you mentioned a lot of guys. Trey Broussard, back, probably one of your best hitters last year, if not your best hitter. Good to see him back. I'm sure if he entered the portal, he could have gotten some play at some other very large schools. You mentioned Dylan Maxey. You might want to pencil him in as the starter at catcher. Comes in from Texas Tech, played quite a bit for Texas Tech as well. Had a good amount of appearances for the Red Raiders as well. So overall, the bats are where I am much more eager to see what happens and have a little bit more faith on than the pitching staff.
Quick schedule thoughts. Cougs will open their season in Puerto Rico with 4 games this coming Friday through Monday. Wake Forest, one of those teams, preseason number 21 team in the country, by far the toughest of the 4 teams you're going to see this weekend. And there are a handful of other non-conference opportunities for big wins. Wake Forest will certainly be among the best the Cougs have in an effort to craft a decent non-conference resume. You have Boston College on Saturday. They've basically been bottom third of the ACC most of their recent seasons. Manhattan was a sub 500 mid-major. You'd hope that's an easy Cougar win. And the Cougs will face Washington in the Monday finale. UW has a rising star in head coach Eddie Smith. Turned around a historically awful Utah Valley team. And then in his first season last year, UW way surpassed their preseason expectations. Was also on an LSU staff for one of their recent national titles. My hope is 3-1 out of this weekend, with one being against Wake Forest or Washington, the one loss. I think hard to get too excited about anything else. Non-conference schedule has obviously Puerto Rico in the opening weekend, and then you're in another multi-team event in Frisco at the end of the month, and then you have 2 weekend home series with UTRGV and Arkansas Pine Bluff. And UTRGV is not a sexy name. They were actually a top 40 RPI team last year, and so I don't think there'll be a major strength of schedule drag on you, but I do understand if it's not a name, they'll get a lot of butts and seats for the home opening weekend. Scheduling Pine Bluff, even though they're by no means the worst SWAC team, I don't know, man. Maybe you get someone a little tougher for that weekend. Obviously, if you're able to pick up wins from the likes of Wake, Bama, Oregon State, maybe Washington and Iowa, you also have Texas at home in a midweek, which will be a good RPI opponent. You pick off some of those games, and you have a decent resume going into Big 12 play, but winning those big non-conference games in recent seasons has been a major bugaboo for this program.
Yeah, I think early on you laid it out pretty well. You'd probably prefer that you didn't have to start against Wake Forest. Maybe you catch them in like game 2 or 3 and you get a little bit of wind beneath your sails. But, like you said early on, this very much with UTRGV and Arkansas Pine Bluff, it really kind of feels like you are trying to build some confidence here and really see what you have heading into Big 12 play.
Quick pause. What do you want to do with the fact that I think we have more than 13 minutes of stuff to talk about? And
we definitely do. Let me... Sorry, I'm just trying to look what all we have here.
Men's golf, softball, tennis, and track.
Let's cut the men's golf preview.
Yeah, we can do that next week.
Yeah,
acknowledge it because I'll acknowledge it just because I did say it at the top.
Yeah. I think we do that. Softball, my notes aren't game by game broken down.
Yeah, me
It's
neither.
just overall thoughts on the weekend.
Yeah, same.
I think we can knock that out. We cut golf, and then we can come back and do track and tennis after the game
Yeah, sounds good to me.
if you want to.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we'll cut golf. We'll do softball now, and then hit it.
We'll acknowledge at least briefly, because I mentioned it at the top. We're going to move the Cougar men's golf preview to next week, as we are a little tight on time to record this week. So our next sport will be going back to the Diamond after our baseball preview to talk about the opening weekend of Houston Cougar softball. Can't take too much away from 4 wins over the likes of Fairfield and HCU, but I think we both saw some positives. And man, it was nice to watch this team play for the first time in 21, 22 months. Co-host Emeritus Dustin was out there in person for a beautiful Saturday at Cougar softball field. With friend of the pod, Sean, and his son. Was very jealous of that because it looked like a great time. Bobby, what were your big takeaways from this opening weekend of games?
Yeah, like you said, there's not a lot to take away from in terms of how good is the team or anything like that, but you did what you needed to do versus lower competition. The first and most obvious thing that I noticed was the pitching. Park gives you 2 starts. You get 6 innings of 1 run versus Houston Christian. In her second start, she went 3 innings and gave up 2 runs. She didn't miss a lot of bats. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did.
But she only had 1 walk in 9 innings, really pounding the strike zone, which is big, right? That's something that you didn't see a lot of last year, was just getting the ball in the strike zone. And that's something that we've talked about with the baseball program a lot, is just pound the zone, just quit giving free runners. And so you didn't see that a ton. Gigi Solis gave you a complete game shutout as well. She also came in for 2 innings of relief work, walked 2, no earned runs with those 2 walks. Compared to last year, and it already looks better just based on the opening weekend. I know competition's different and all those things. And then offensively, we knew this team was going to be solid. Great performances by Maddox Mitchell, who had 2 home runs, and Maddie Hartley, who also had 2 home runs. Really nice to see the younger players like that stand out in the opening weekend. Sam, what'd you see, bud?
For me, the questions we had from our preview last week kind of remain. Don't think these 2 opponents offer enough offensively to be anything close to a true test for your pitching staff, which I think still remains as that biggest question. But really liked what I saw from Gigi Solis, who threw her first career complete game shutout in that second win over HCU, threw 2 scoreless to close out the weekend finale against Fairfield for that run rule win. I watched nearly all those 9 innings she threw this weekend, and I can't exactly say why, but she just looked like a confident veteran out there. Only walked 2 batters over those 9 innings as well. I really liked what I saw in relief 2 different times from sophomore Nevaeh Brown as well. She threw 4 scoreless, hitless innings in the 1 close game of the weekend, that 3-2 win over Fairfield on Friday night. By far her longest scoreless outing in her college career. Maybe she didn't pound the zone 100% as effectively as Solis did, but I don't think I'm overstating it to say that Brown's a good candidate to be pretty improved off a freshman season where she mostly pretty much struggled, in the circle. Really liked in the 1 game where the bats didn't pop a bunch, that the pitching was good enough to keep you from having a bad loss opening weekend. I mean, how much better both Solis and Brown are is definitely an unanswered question, but just evaluating this weekend, I really liked what I saw. Didn't like as much from Illinois transfer London Park for a lot of the reasons you said. She started the opening game against HCU and game 1 against Fairfield. It did really see like HCU was getting a lot of hard contact, especially in their second and third times through the order. We also saw a little of Nicole Badeau starting the finale against Fairfield. She didn't give up an earned run, but probably had more traffic than ideal, was eventually pulled for Solis. They talked on the broadcast a lot about Schoonmaker and the new staff, really emphasizing strike throwing, getting ahead in counts. And you saw it this weekend, even if I'll say for her, not the first time, that the real tests haven't come on the schedule this season. To me, the biggest statement of how good this lineup could be is that your leading returning hitter, Jordy Wilkins, really mostly only features as a defensive sub this weekend. You had Ariel Redmond and Maddie Hartley both having incredible starts to the year. I can't separate Redmond and Hartley, honestly, for who is the Cougs' best hitter opening weekend. Redmond hit .545, also had 3 outfield assists playing in center. None better than one where one of her teammates, I think Mitchell, but not sure, missed a tricky short fly ball. Redmond immediately fires it in to second base, gets the Fairfield runner trying to take an extra bag. Hartley, man, so this week was my first time watching her, even though obviously it's her second season in the program. She has such a sweet swing. 4 of her 6 hits again were extra base hits. including those 2 homers that I believe you mentioned. And even though I know Hartley and Redmond, their numbers are going to come back down to earth a bit as the schedule gets harder, you'd still have a hard time convincing me those 2 won't be dramatically improved over last season's production at the plate, where they were both, I think, promising freshmen. You also have McKenna Mitchell and Maddox Mitchell both having great weekends. Kylie Griffin getting her first Cougar career home run. McKenna Mitchell getting her first career home run period. Ronnie Esparza, also one of the 2 true freshmen who really saw regular action this weekend with Leilani Garcia. She really has a sweet swing as well. The numbers for Esparza aren't as eye-popping as the other players I've mentioned here, but she's one to watch long-term. They mentioned in the broadcast she'd mostly played second base in her prep career, but is out there at first base right now because, obviously the staff really wants her in the lineup day one. Just like we did with the pitching, you try not to go overboard with what the Cougs did against largely outmatched opponents, but hard not to feel like this lineup has a chance to build on a 2025 season where they were already pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the lineup looked really good over the weekend.
So up next, the Cougars will host a multi-team event at home for the second straight weekend in a row. Pretty typical for this time of year. The Houston Invitational this weekend against mostly opponents from cold weather places looking to get their non-conference games in. Your opener will be Thursday night against Pitt, with a doubleheader Friday against Lafayette and Penn State, Michigan on Saturday afternoon, and then Incarnate Word for the Sunday finale. I'm not going to preview all 5 opponents in depth, but just quick thoughts on each. Pitt was a lower end of the ACC program last season, went 3-2 their opening weekend in Florida, did get a win over Auburn, though they dropped their last game to Eastern Kentucky. Penn State went 4-1 in their opening weekend, with their only blemish being a 1-run loss to Auburn. Some good wins among the 4 they picked up as well. If I had to guess, Michigan will be the toughest of the 3 quote-unquote power conference northern schools the Cougs will see this weekend. They went 4-1 last weekend in Tampa, beating UCF on their field, with their only loss coming to number 5 Florida. UIW and Lafayette should be easy wins. I don't think you're going to leave this weekend unscathed. It'll be a big statement if you do, but I'm not really expecting it. And if you could take 2 of 3 against the Pitt, Michigan, Penn State trio, I'll leave the weekend feeling pretty damn good.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. Those are the games that if you can pick off a couple of those big time northern schools. One of my one of the funniest memories I have of Cougar softball stadium was actually against Michigan. They had this player who was one of the best players in the country, and it was one of these early tournaments, and she hit the ball so hard it hit the O in the backdrop in right center. And none of us knew exactly where it hit on the wall because it was so fast. I don't know why that's it was such an absolute nuke. If the backdrop wasn't there, it probably would have reached what are now the those apartments that are back there. What used to have been the College Store, it would have hit that on a line. It was insane, man.
And we had another Cougar sport back in action in Houston as the Cougar tennis team opened their home schedule with a pair of wins that we will discuss here in this latest Cougar Tennis Corner. So you play a Saturday doubleheader with UNM being the morning match and UTRGV being the afternoon match. The morning one against the Lobos was probably the less clean, maybe not to standard performance of the 2, which head coach Kat Adamovich said pretty plainly in her post-match remarks after that one, but still one with plenty of positive takeaways. I missed watching most of the singles portion live because I committed to play paddle with some friends Saturday morning before realizing it conflicted with this. But the doubles portion, which I watched the entirety of, was as dominant as I hoped it would be. Coming into the week, actually for the first time in program history, U of H had 2 different top 100 ranked doubles pairings, Sophie Schouten and Shems Doha-Zigluli checking at 82nd nationally, and Lisa Morsova and Petya Drame coming in at 86. I mostly watched Eva Seppa and Valeria Krohatina on court 2, as that's the pairing I've gotten to watch the least of. And they continue to look like they're really developing the on-court chemistry that you'd want to see. And great news there, because such as U of H has had any weaknesses here early in the season, the Cougs out of the gates didn't look as strong on doubles court 2 as the other 2. And Eva Valeria left this weekend with a 3-0 record this season. Cougs ultimately took the double point in this one, winning on courts 1 and 2, with Lisa and Petya only being 1 game away from winning their match before the Cougs clinched the overall point. Singles wasn't as clean. It was probably the source of most of Kat's post-match concerns. Cougs won their first on every court, but struggled closing some of those matches out. Shems lost on court 2, her second set 6-4 before decisively closing out her third, which clinched the overall match. Eva got 6-0'd in her second set before taking control of her third set. That one ultimately went unfinished, and Petchia was down 6-5 in her second set when the overall match was called. That doesn't take away the dominant performances, though, from this one. Unsurprisingly, Valeria and Sophie made quick work of their opponents on courts 5 and 6, respectively. That put the Cougs up 3-0. But if Kat's larger concern is that this wasn't an effort that would have been good enough to beat really even the lower level of Big 12 opponents, I think I would co-sign that. New Mexico is a good deal worse than even the lowest end of the Big 12 teams we'll see this season, but thankfully, ultimately pretty stress-free Cougar win, and not indicative of what we saw a little bit later in the day against UTRGV, which was the Cougs' first time seeing the Vaqueros since a shocking and humiliating loss that was part and parcel of the Cougs 2024 season, and this couldn't have gone more differently than that last head-to-head. For the doubles point, the Cougs were about as dominant as you could be. Sophie and Shems won 6-1, Lisa and Petchia 6-0'd their opponents, while Eva and Valeria were up 5-2 when the Cougs clinched the overall point. This match was unique for the season because all 6 matches actually got played to their conclusion instead of the match ending when U of H clinched. That's usually something the coaches agree upon before the match. I remember actually when I was out in Irvine, I saw when Kat and UCI's coach just kind of agreed, like, yeah, we'll play to clinch, which means basically once a team wins enough points to clinch the overall 7, no need to keep playing this further. But some coaches like to play to 7. I think I noticed on UTRGV's schedule last week, they'd played most of theirs to 7. So maybe it was one of those. Their coach wanted to, and Kat was just like, yeah, sure, we could use the singles reps. I don't know, but I would say that's probably the most likely outcome there. And it was hard to be more dominant than the Cougs were in singles against UTRGV. The Cougs won all 6 of those in straight sets. Sophie won on court 6 while only dropping 1 game the entire match. Petchia only dropped 3 on court 5. Her first time playing there, actually. You rested Valeria Krohotina for the singles portion of this match. Really, the only matches where the Cougar athlete had to do some work were court 1, where Lisa got out to a big early lead, but let her opponent back in it and tie it 5-5 before closing out her first set, and won her second set a bit more convincingly. But I watched her, and I could tell there were times where she wasn't happy with how she played. There was like a point she lost at 40-40 where she like dropped her knees afterwards. And I was just like, oh, even as a much worse racket sport athlete, that is very, very relatable. Hit a few of those shots in my time. But closed hers out, I think, without much drama. Eva Seppa was really the only player at any point in this match who was down. She was down as much as 4-1 in her first set. She fought back to win that one on a tiebreaker, and ultimately was the final match to go final, closed it out, winning her second set pretty convincingly while her teammates cheered her on. It was pretty cool to watch. Not going to overstate what UTRGV is, but UTRGV and UNM are pretty similar. They actually played head-to-head on Friday at U of H's facility just to get, I guess, as many non-conference matches in as possible, and it was like a 4-3 New Mexico win. So you can kind of say these are two very similar opponents. And so it was easy to see that the afternoon match where you won at 7-0 was a much more complete effort, which you want to see. Like, it didn't expect either of these to really be super challenging matches, but good to see the Cougs didn't really play around with their food in either of those. And this week, actually, the Cougs will be finishing the non-conference slate, 2 final non-conference matches. Friday at 1 p.m., the Cougs will host UTSA, which I would say from last season probably gave you your most painful non-conference loss. But it's going to be an extremely different looking UTSA team than that one. Most of last year's top players either graduated or, in the case of current TCU player Letizia Corsini, transferred to a higher level program. Roadrunners are currently 4-1, not the strongest 4-1. Their one loss was their only away match so far, where they lost 4-3 to Abilene Christian. They've been good in the doubles court so far. So I think that alone will at least be a good test for how improved the Cougs really are in doubles, which is something new coming to the season would be very, very important. Would still generally say that UTSA is probably worse than the Loyola Marymount North Texas teams that the Cougs have already beaten, but probably better than everyone else. So a solid home test. And then on Saturday afternoon, the Cougs will host the team, at least coming into the season, I expect it to be the toughest challenge in non-conference, SFA, who returned a good chunk of their roster off of winning the Southland and making the NCAAs last year. But bit of a slow start for them. They play a lot fewer matches than the Cougs. They lost their opener at Abilene Christian, also lost to common opponent North Texas and Denton this past Friday. Like UTSA, they've been notably better in doubles, but have struggled even worse than UTSA when it comes to singles, though I still expect Felicia Bach to be Lisa Morsova's biggest challenge of an opponent that she's seen in Court 1 singles so far. Also, depending on what lineup the Cougs send out there, Sonia Ruth, who is the Lady Jacks' lone undefeated singles player, I think will be an interesting matchup for probably Chems on in Court 3. In both cases, though, these opponents will be tougher tests than the teams we saw last weekend, but I'm pretty confident the Cougars will be going to Big 12 play here at the end of this month with an undefeated 9-0 non-conference record.
That's super exciting. Just from where this team was last year, I think the doormat era is probably over, and you can just see the floor of this team has been raised to a level that we haven't seen in a while. So really exciting here. Exciting things happening over at the tennis facility.
Yeah, I still don't know exactly what they're going to do in Big 12 play, but very confident it's going to be something better than last year, and exactly what that ends up being. Excited to see. I think the ceiling is a little bit higher just based on, not that you've won all of these, but the dominance. Like, I thought we'd beat North Texas. I did not think we'd dominate North Texas. I thought we'd beat Loyola Marymount. I didn't think we'd dominate Loyola Marymount. So it's been exciting, but obviously the toughest tests are still to come. And last but not least, with us getting closer to the business end of the indoor track and field season, and not having the time last week with an even more limited recording window than we usually have, figured we'd check back in with Houston Cougar Track and Field. They've had a couple meets since we last talked about them on here. The Robert Platt Invitational 2 weekends ago, and more recently the Charlie Thomas Invitational hosted by A&M in College Station. The Cougs had 7 individual victories up in College Station and a double-digit victories 2 weekends ago in Houston. Top performances, ironically, a non-event winner, but that sometimes happens here. Freshman Dominic Harper was currently the 8th fastest time in the country in the 200, only not winning because Arizona State's Amir Thompson ended up winning with was currently the tied for the 5th fastest, time in the country. But both athletes currently have the top times among all Big 12 athletes in the event. Andrea Mita also won the men's high jump with the best clearance of 7 feet 1 3/4 in College Station, currently tied for the 12th best performance of the indoor season. Cordell Nwokeji, who's had an unreal indoor campaign in the men's shot put, once again broke his own personal best mark, clearing 19 meters. And something I saw he specifically talked about wanting to surpass in a social media post that U of H Track and Field put out, where they talked to all their event winners after the Robert Platt Invitational. That was cool. Winning the shot put for the 4th time this season in as many meets. I think Nwokeji should absolutely be the favorite to be standing at the top of the podium come time for the Big 12 indoor meet. His best performance currently tied for 12th best in the country from that latest showing in College Station this weekend. Another absurdly consistent athlete this indoor season is Casey McCoy, who posted was currently tied for the 7th fastest time in the country in the women's 60-meter hurdles 2 weekends ago at the Robert Platt Memorial, winning that event for the 3rd time in as many meets as she ran it. Like McCoy, Cleo Ajapong's another athlete that you and I have talked about here previously, Bobby, who's having a great indoor season. She turned in her best performance this season as well up in College Station, winning the women's shot put with a best throw of 54 feet, 10 1/4 put her tied for 19th best performance in the country, 2nd among Big 12 athletes. And that's not even a full listing of all the awesome stuff this team did. And I think that was a pretty long listing of stuff I just did there. So I think it's an exciting season.
Yeah,
and again with the big meets to come.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned Dominic Harper, 4th best time in program history coming from a freshman. That'll work, man. That will work pretty well. And then also I wanted to shout out Zach Miller. Completed the 3rd sub-4 minute mile in program history. Joins Brian Barraza and Leonard Hilton as the other 2 athletes who did that. Gotta say, when you start putting your name in the same breath as people who have an event named after themselves, you're doing all right. So both those guys freshmen. Zach Miller is a redshirt freshman, I believe. I might have that wrong, and he might be a sophomore. But I'm
he's a freshman. He's a freshman.
True freshman. I couldn't remember. Yes. I couldn't remember if it was true or redshirt.
I might have something on Zach Miller here in a little bit.
But those were the 2 guys that I really wanted to really just kind of shout out. Whenever you do the 4th best time in program history, and you are one of 3 people in program history, not that this program's like known for its long distance running or its mile running or anything like that, but anytime you're a freshman and you can do anything that's only been done 2 other times, that's pretty impressive, man.
No doubt. And I believe Miller will be getting talked about again here in a little bit. So like we talked about before, Bobby, we're going to each talk about 2 athletes that we have not specifically highlighted. I believe that did that the last time we talked about track and field. So who are your two athletes that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, my two athletes that I just, like I said, I wanted to give shine to were Dominic Harper and Zach Miller. Those two are just athletes that when you come in as a freshman, it's tough, man. It's tough to be competitive, let alone do things that this program has seen very few times before. This indoor season has been really good for these two athletes, and they're putting up times that you don't expect to see from freshmen. And those are the points that you sneaky get in Big 12 competition and in NCAAs. Those are the kind of things that make the difference in your standing in places that you don't expect it to, right? We expect the program to be really good at sprints and to do and to get points there, and the throws have looked really good. Distance hasn't always been the strength of this team, and having somebody who can come in, run a sub 4 minute mile is big, and those are 5-6 points that you can get that will help you compete in the Big 12 championships.
Yeah, so my athletes were Zach Miller, who we talked about, and women's pole vaulter Evgenia Maria Panagiotou. Right now, neither athlete is at or super close to the cut line to be representing U of H at NCAA indoors, but they're both promising young athletes to watch for the long term. You said what I was going to say about Miller. Has multiple wins this indoor season, the 1 mile run, College Station last weekend, like you said, became only the third Cougar in program history to run a sub 4 minute mile. And I'm glad he's in that group with Brian Barraza because Miller's absolutely the best distance running prospect to come to this program since Barraza, which is an exciting thought because this was a man who, one of my Cougar heartbreaks was like leading the steeplechase, the 2018 outdoor championship. Like that's the level of distance runner he was. And that's not where Miller is right now. But I would say that he's here already as a freshman, that he's putting up top 100 performances in the country and putting himself in rarefied air in the program. I think that's got to be really exciting for the long term if the Cougs can hold on to him. Like Miller, Panagiotou is coming off a season best performance in College Station. She had a best clearance of 13 feet, 11 and a quarter inches, which broke her own U of H record and personal best performance in the pole vault. She came on our radar a bit during last year's outdoor season as a freshman and has really taken the exact steps forward you'd want to see from a freshman to sophomore season. And there's no reason to think that she isn't in this program for another 2 seasons, that she can't finish her career among the best in the country and certainly cement her place as the best women's pole vaulter we've ever talked about in this program. Good chance she's already there, but I think this is just really the start of where she could be. And I think it's not an insane expectation that she can eventually get to that level, given what Evgenia has shown so far in her college career. And zoom out a tiny bit. My last big picture thought is that even acknowledging that we'll probably be talking about a deeper, larger group of athletes come outdoor track and field season. That's usually the case of this program.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most I've been excited about the close of an indoor season in a while. We've talked about probably 10 of them now on this podcast. You have athletes like Jamar Marshall Jr. and Casey McCoy, plus veterans like Trey East, Anthony Trucks, and Michaela Mouton, who could finish the season strong. Not to mention exciting new face in Dominic Harper and one of your more usual sprinting events where you expect to see Cougar track and field excel in historically. But you just have this great variety of contributors in the different events as well. Great throwing depth on both the men's and women's sides with Cordell Nwokeji, Cleo Ajapong at the top end, but also Zeta Hoff, Ty Lott, and Esther Osaseki right behind them. Andrea Media in the high jump is consistently one of the best out there, should be a favorite to win the event at Big 12 indoors. And we just graduated a number of good pole vaulters by just mentioning her. Evgenia Panagiotou is on the path to being one of the best in the country in her event and is currently rewriting U of H's record book. Zach Miller, probably a year or two away from truly being among the contenders in Big 12 distance running. The Big 12 is quite good in this discipline specifically. You have BYU and Oklahoma State are among the 2 best in the country. I'm probably forgetting at least a couple in there. But he had an eye-opening first cross-country and indoor season so far. Just so exciting that this is his first year in college. Probably at least a couple of athletes who I didn't even name check here who will at least be impact performers at Big 12 indoors, if not NCAAs. And just a reminder also for NCAA indoors, there's no preliminary meet between the conference indoor championships and the NCAA meet. Just once those conference championships are done, the top 16 individual performers and top 12 relays are selected to compete at the indoor event. So if the season ended today, obviously it doesn't, we have at least one more week of regular season and conference championships. U of H would be sending 4 men's athletes And one women's, you'd be sending Dominic Harper in the 200, Andrea Mita in the high jump, Cordell Nokeji in the shot put, and Jamar Marshall Jr. in the 60 hurdles. Of those four, Marshall is the closest to the cutoff currently, and will probably need one more good performance between now and the end of the month to ensure he'll be representing the Cougs indoors. But the good news there is Marshall has by far the most experience competing at the highest levels of college track and saving his best performances for this time now, the business end of the season. Your lone women's current qualifier is, not surprisingly, Casey McCoy in the 60-meter hurdles, but I will note that Cleo Ajapong on the shot put is just off the qualifying cut, and I'll say Esther Osaseki and Evgenia Maria Panagiotou are both good candidates to have big performances to close the season and maybe slip into the top 16. Long way of saying I'm as excited about this finish of the indoor season as I've been since probably before COVID, but since guys like Hall and Burrell were in this program, and can't wait to see what this group does over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing for me is I watch these events unfurl, I guess you could say, and happen, and I look through the recaps and I look through the roster and I see who's performing well. It's just this like crazy youth movement. Like every time it's somebody, it's like, oh, check it out, it's a sophomore, this person's a freshman, this runner's a, and you just keep seeing this youth movement who are just coming in. And like you said, in the outdoor season you see some more veterans and things like that, so this is a good opportunity. The indoor season is a great opportunity for these younger athletes to see the track and to be in these meets. But man, if you're gonna do it, like, at least win events, and they are doing that, and that's really exciting to continue to watch going forward.
No doubt. Up next, the Cougs will split athletes between the home Howie Ryan Invitational at U of H on Friday and the Don Kirby Invitational at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque Friday and Saturday before the Big 12 Championship meet here at the end of this month in Lubbock. Bobby, talked a lot of Cougs tonight. Take us home, pal.
All right, well, that is it for this week's episode of the Scott and Holman podcast. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear it. You can find us on social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast. That is PAWDCAST. You can find us there. You can also find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. Also PAWDCAST there. And if you want to give us your thoughts old school style and just email us, you can find us shpodcast@gmail.com. We will get that. We will respond, possibly, if we think it's worth responding to. No, we will, we take your feedback. We appreciate it. But you can email us shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you really want us to pay attention to your feedback, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/shpodcast. $5 a month gets you premium content. With March Madness coming up, I'm sure Sam and I will come up with some really cool ideas to get you excited about that and to cover that. And Sam, I think we covered everything. We spoke for about 2 hours worth of Cougar content with a about 2 hour break built in there. So Sam, it's been fun. What do we always say here, buddy?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!